Okay.
Okay, so hi everybody, this is Molly Schwartz here, one of the team members helping to put on the MyData conference in Helsinki from August 31st to September 2nd, and I'm sitting here with one of our plenary speakers, Dr. Rufus Pollock, who is a founder and president of Open Knowledge, a worldwide network working to provide more access to open and raw data sets. And so we're very
Yeah.
excited to have him here. So, Rufus, something that not a lot of people know is that MyData is actually an initiative that was born out of the Open Knowledge Finland chapter. How do you feel about seeing things like this that were kind of started by your initial idea spring up of their own accord?
Well, it's just, I mean, it's inspirational and obviously really satisfying, and not so much in a personal way. I mean, I think it's more that you kind of just, it's, it's just wonderful to see how things flourish. I think that's what I would say, and obviously, particularly Open Knowledge Finland have been an incredibly active chapter. And I think also I have to say when I first went to Finland, I think it was in about 2010 or something, and I was just inspired. Also, I think Finland is a place. I don't know. I have this kind of feeling it's kind of a wise society. In a lot of ways, the way they approach things, they're very kind of like both engaged, but kind of I guess they have that kind of non-attachment, that rigor of looking at things and also trying things out. You know, there's not a lot of ego somehow. It's like very curious to learn, but also to try things out. And I actually think deep down are incredibly innovative. So I think this is really in that tradition because I think the area of personal and my data is just a huge issue and one with a lot of connections to open data, even if it's distinct. So I think it's a very natural thing for a chapter from Open Knowledge to be taking on and looking at because it's central to how we look at the kind of the information society, the knowledge society of the 21st century.
Definitely. Yes, I totally agree. And I like that you brought up that this concept of personal data is somewhat distinct, but it's inevitably tied to these broader questions of open data. Oftentimes,
Absolutely.
opening data sets, you're dealing with personal data sets as well.
Yes.
So, what are the kind of things that you're planning to speak about loosely at the conference, and what do you look forward to hearing from other people who will be at MyData?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So what am I looking to talk about or engage with, and what am I looking forward to hearing about? Well, maybe I'll almost take the second first because I would
Sure.
like to put a humility here. I think one of the reasons I'm really excited to participate and come is it's an area I know. Obviously, I know about data and information and the many of the questions going on around privacy and other things, but I'm certainly not as much of an expert in this area by a long way. So I'm really curious to hear, I guess, one is what the policy landscape, what people think are the big things that are coming up. I'm also very interested to see, what the business is looking at. I mean, there's been quite a lot of discussion about how one could innovate in this space in a way that was both provided opportunity for people to use data, personal data, in useful ways. Maybe it be in healthcare, maybe in all, maybe in giving people credit. I mean, all kinds of areas. But how do you do that in a way that respects and preserves people's privacy and so on? So I think that's really interesting as well. Again, I'm not so up on that space. So I'm looking forward to meeting and hearing from some of the people in that area. Um, yeah, I think so. I think on that side, on the policy and on the business side, and also on the civil society side or the research side, um, I know everything from like differential privacy and some of the breakthroughs we've had over the last years about like how one might allow people to look at information. Like genetics is one area, healthcare is a big area. How there's clearly a lot of value you can have from researchers being able to look at, for example, genomic data of individuals, but across a bunch of them. But obviously, it's also crucial to be able to preserve privacy that may be there. And what are the kind of things going on there? And the research side also would, I think, touch on the policy side of matters as well. So just just um, just one. Thanks a lot. Wait, edit that one out.
Yeah, that's okay.
Or it's a great place of live video for such a thing.
Yeah.
Um, so so for my part, I guess what I think is I am how do I put it? I think open knowledge generally, and we are on is on a journey. Ultimately, kind of almost at a policy level to make sure that this incredible information revolution, this digital revolution, which means we're living in a world of bits, that world works for everyone, and that it works. Rather than delivering more inequality, which it could easily do so, and more exploitation, it gives us actually fairness and empowerment. It brings freedom rather than manipulation or oppression, and that isn't limited to data sets that can be open, made, what I would call sometimes public data sets. By public data sets, I don't just mean government, I mean data sets that you can legitimately share with anyone. And I contrast that with private data, which you can't legitimately or legally give to anyone or sell to anyone, or shouldn't be able to, maybe. Maybe sometimes it should be happening.
Yeah.
And the question of how, I think those two things, both in just overall policy, but also in the mind of the public and of citizens and so on, are linked. And this issue of how we manage information in the 21st century doesn't kind of stop at some nice line of, oh, well, it's public data, and therefore we kind of look at it this way. And so I always had this metaphor of a coin. One side of the coin, you might say, is, public data or even government data, open to everyone. Everyone's empowered with access. But I think the flip side of that is your data is yours, and you should be choosing how it's shared and how it's used. And while open knowledge is focused on, if you like, the public side, and will continue often do so, overall, I think, across the network, this issue of personal data is just huge. It has this huge linkage. And I think the same principles can be applied. Just as for open data, what we say is that people have freedom to access, share, use, government, whatever data that's been made open. So your personal data, you should be empowered to access, share, and use that as you see fit. And right now, that is just not the case. And it's what both leads to the abuses that we get concerned about, but it's also what stops some of the innovation and stops people being empowered. I'd love to have my last 5 years of, shopping receipts, So I'll also just say the reason I think this is so relevant to open knowledge is that these things are interconnected. Basically, the kind of open public data and what happens with my data, my personal data, they're interconnected both in people's minds, in the sense they don't just care about one thing or the other. They care about how does digital information going to work, how's mine going to be managed, how's the world's going to be managed. And they're also kind of interconnected conceptually. And I also think my data is some of the most relevant and practically. As I said, just recently, I need to check a bank. Had someone paid me, and it was just a nightmare. I had to scroll. My bank didn't let me download the data in any convenient way. Eventually I found some, but it was only 3 months. Like, they've got it on their servers. Why can't I have it?
Yeah.
And maybe. And maybe not only do I want it, maybe there's some part of it I would share anonymized, or I'd share, it could be aggregated and we could have these patterns of what people are doing. Right. Or energy use. I'd happily share my house's energy use data with people, even if it does show when I go to bed. It's like, I'm really happy with that. So I think the word at the heart of it is empowerment. We open knowledge want to see people empowered in the information age to understand, to make choices, to hold power to account. And one of the fundamental things is you being empowered with the information about you that companies or governments have. And we think that you should be getting access to that, and you should be choosing who else has access to it, not the company or not the government per se.
Yes. And that's exactly the principle of why MyData came out of open knowledge. As you mentioned earlier, this idea that why can not these same principles of open knowledge of the data sets that we want to be receiving also apply to our data that we would like to be open in the same way back to us?
Absolutely correct, Molly. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's why it's also so interesting. So many people have been talking about kind of this inherent tension sometimes between openness and privacy, and kind of changing how we're thinking about that and seeing it as actually the same principles just being applied to individual people.
Exactly. That's a point I'll maybe say later. The post I wrote with my co-CEO at the time, Laura James, back in 2013 about MyData, as we were calling it at the time, was exactly this, that there's an underlying unity that you're pointing out that actually is the deeper principle, which is the principle. It's like I always say that even about openness. Openness isn't an end in itself, right? It's like saying I want more gold. Information is in the service of empowering human beings to do something, to understand, to innovate, to learn, to discover, to earn a living, whatever it is. And that idea of empowerment fundamentally is common in both threads of my data and personal data and access to that, and the access to public data for everyone.
Right.
So I just think you're so right.
Yes. Yes. So thank you so much, Rufus, for joining us today for this interview, and we're really looking forward to having you at the conference. You've mentioned that you've been to Finland before. How long ago was that?
I went in 2012. We ran Open Knowledge Festival there in 2012, which was amazing.
Yes.
And then in 2010, and I'll just end by saying on my part also, I'm not only going to come, I'm also fascinated. Finland's running one of the biggest basic income experiments in the world right now, and so they're doing a lot of innovative work, not just in the digital area where they are incredibly doing all kinds of things. So I'm really looking forward to participating in the event. I warmly, by the way, anyone seen this, come along. Finland's an amazing place. Helsinki's an amazing place, and it will be an amazing event. So I really invite you to come along to the conference.
I would second that, and it's many of the same people who are involved in organizing the Open Knowledge Festival who are involved in organizing MyData. So we can expect much of the same. Yes.
Yeah, a brilliant program, high quality people, an incredible kind of combination of kind of joy and reliability. So you'll have an amazing time. Come join us.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you, Rufus. And we will see you in August.
See you in August.